Good afternoon, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for Friday, April 10th, 2015, around 4:04 p.m. in Berwick, Massachusetts. It's still a damp and dreary day. Some rain showers today, but nothing significant. It's an April day, but warmer temperatures are coming beginning tomorrow. And not too much news to report. And we're on to the next subject. The next subject is the continuation series of professional wrestling regional territories. I'm now at Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Smoky Mountain Wrestling was a regional promotion which was encompassed Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, and Georgia, which lasted from the winter of 1992 through November 1995. Its owner is one of the most famous professional wrestling managers of all time, James E. Cornette. And it was founded by Cornette and Stan Lane and Tim Horner and Sandy Scott. Jim Cornette wanted professional wrestling to get back to its roots, being a regional territory. They would mainly run in high school gyms and some small to mid-sized arenas in the area they encompassed at. And Smoky Mountain Wrestling had a good talent base, which eventually they became stars, and they had a good television deal. The announcers of Smoky Mountain Wrestling were Bob Caudle and Dirty Dutch Mantell. It eventually became Jim Ross and Les Thatcher, and they got a lot of television stations in the area. Plus, they had some television stations as like in the northern part of the United States, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Massachusetts, and I think Western United States and stuff. And like Jim Cornette was a figure on Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He managed the Henley Bodies, which was the Doctor of Desire, Tom Pritchard, and Sweet Stan Lane. They became several times Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions. They had a feud with the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, and also the Stud Stable, which was Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden. Jimmy Golden eventually became Bunkhouse Buck in WCW, and Robert Fuller became Colonel Robert Parker in WCW. And they did some TV tapings in gyms in the area like North Carolina and South Carolina. Their main cards they have for the house shows would be in high school gyms and stuff. They would run major shows in like the Knoxville arena and a couple of other arenas in Knoxville, Tennessee. The first Smoky Mountain champion was primetime Brian Lee. He won in a tournament on May 22nd, 1992. He beat Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff for the title, and he was the Smoky Mountain champion for a few months. The commissioner of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, the on-air commissioner, was Bullet Bob Armstrong. He would always get involved with Jim Cornette and all the other heels. Primetime Brian Lee had a major feud with the Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony, and his manager was Ron Wright, a guy who was in a wheelchair, but he wasn't really handicapped. It was the gimmick. And then Ron Wright interfered again in one match against Brian Lee with the Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony wrestling. Tony Anthony became the new Smoky Mountain wrestling champion, and then he had a gimmick change that he claimed he wasn't from the South, he was from New York City. A funny gimmick, and he had a long-running feud with Tracy Smothers over the Smoky Mountain Wrestling World Championship. Also, they also had other talent come in to Smoky Mountain, like Tim Horner, and they also had Brad Armstrong for a while. They had Ivan Koloff, the Fantastics. They had a lot of wrestlers, the Guerreros, the Batten Twins, and a few others. And they briefly had a working agreement with WCW, and the Rock and Roll Express and the Henley Bodies would have a few matches at WCW. They had a match at Super Bowl Brawl 3 in North Carolina, but it was short-lived because Jim Cornette and WCW did not get along. Also around mid-19 1993, they had the Night Stalker, who was Adam Bomb, and Kevin Sullivan come in and feud with primetime Brian Lee. And there was a new face in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Her name was Tammy Lynn Sitch, and she started off trying to manage Tracy Smothers, but Tracy Smothers rejected her, and then she got rejected by other wrestlers. Eventually, she convinced primetime Brian Lee to turn heel, and he turned heel on Tracy Smothers, and they had a long-running feud. Also, Chris Candido came into Smoky Mountain. Chris Candido and primetime Brian Lee formed a tag team, and they became Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions. Also, other champions for Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions over the years were the Blues Brothers, and they had the Rock and Roll Express, Heavenly Bodies, the Gangsters, and so many others. And also around this time, WWE had a working relationship with Smoky Mountain Wrestling that would send some talent down, like Macho Man Randy Savage, the Big Boss Man, and a few others. And sometimes Smoky Mountain talent would go to the WWE, including Jim Cornette, the Heavenly Bodies, and a few others. Around 1994, Jake the Snake Roberts came to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and he won the Smoky Mountain World Championship against the Dirty White Boy, Tony Anthony, but Tony Anthony regained it. Tony Anthony, the Dirty White Boy, was probably one of the most successful wrestlers in Smoky Mountain history. And also Jim Cornette had he managed the Heavenly Bodies and Bruiser Beldam and a few others. And around this time, they had a new member of the Heavenly Bodies. Sweet Stan Lang retired from wrestling, and they added the Gigolo Jimmy Dalloway, and they still had a feud with the Rock and Roll Express. And they also had Cactus Jack come to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and Smoky Mountain was doing pretty good for being in a regional territory. But this was when the wrestling recession happened, and Smoky Mountain Wrestling could not get a good television deal. It was not syndicated through everywhere in the United States. They didn't get on cable television and stuff, and they never had a pay-per-view card. Around late 1994, they had a wrestler called Unabomber came into Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He was with Al Snow. Unabomber became the Kane in the WWE after a couple of short-lived gimmicks, and Al Snow was a veteran journeyman wrestler. And also, this is around the time when the Gangsters came into ECW. I mean Smoky Mountain Wrestling. They were Mustafa and New Jack, and they were with their bodyguard D'Lo Brown, and they became Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions. And they were offered to be services by Jim Cornette, but the Gangsters turned Jim Cornette down. So Jim Cornette had asked his longtime rivals, the Rock and Roll Express, to join them to fight the Gangsters. The Rock and Roll Express did, and then the Rock and Roll Express won the Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions over the Gangsters. But this was a ploy because Jim Cornette was setting the Rock and Roll Express up, because returning Heavily Bodies came in, and then Jim Cornette changed his outfit from 70s style suits to a militia-type gang. The militia-type gang had Heavily Bodies, Terry Gordy, Wildfire Tommy Rich, Al Snow, Unabomber, and a few others. It was very funny. Eventually, the Rock and Roll Express broke up, and Robert Gibson turned heel, and he joined Jim Cornette's militia. Also around this time, they had a working relationship with the NWA. And Chris Candido became NWA World Champion during the time in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but he lost it to Dan Severn. Also around this time, they had a promotional feud with the USWA, and USWA wrestlers who came into Smoky Mountain were heels, like Jerry the King Lawler and Brian Christopher and the Moondogs and Billy Jack Haynes and Psycho Sid Vicious, while the Smoky Mountain wrestlers like Brad Armstrong and the Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony and a few others were heels. And this Smoky Mountain Wrestling versus USWA feud lasted for about 4, 5, 6 months. But it ended because in November of 1995, Smoky Mountain Wrestling was dropped for closed down because Jim Cornette got a full-time job working in the WWE offices in the booking committee. And he says he couldn't, and all the years Smoky Mountain was in existence, 5 years, it was, they did okay business, but it was not profitable. And a lot of the wrestling fans, didn't want to see. They liked Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but it was kind of too old school, being in high school auditoriums and stuff, gymnasiums, small venues, which by the 1990s, this stuff really did not work to sustain a full-time business model, because wrestling organizations from the mid-80s on, you were going to make it big, you needed to be on national television and cable television, a great syndicated deal. Smoky Mountain Wrestling had a decent syndicated deal, but they did not have, they weren't on a national cable network. They never had a pay-per-view card. They had some working relationship with WWE and USWA, but they didn't last too long. And some of the biggest names in professional wrestling came out of Smoky Mountain eventually. Al Snow, with his head, he didn't have the head gimmick then. The Unabomber, who became Isaac Yankem, and the Fake Diesel and Kane. They also like Chris Candido, who became Skip of the Body Donners. Boo Bradley, who became Balls Mahoney. And Jim Cornette. And Tammy Lynn Sitch, who became Sunny of the WWE, the most downloaded celebrity on American online history. So, and I've seen some tapes of Smoky Mountain on DVD and on YouTube. It was a great regional territory, but it was years past this concept was years outdated and stuff like that. But Jim Cornette gave it a try, and he did a good effort, but in the end, it was not very successful for a long-term business thing. And that's about it on Smoky Mountain Wrestling. My next professional wrestling regional territory will be tomorrow, which will be about the Global Wrestling Federation in Dallas, Texas. And Sunday, to end it all, will be Portland Wrestling out of Portland, Oregon. Third and final video blog of the night coming up, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Later on today, it's going to be about the great one, actor Dwayne Johnson, but everybody knows him as The Rock. Finally, The Rock has come back to YouTube. Or Rock would say, if he's talking, if he meets Julie Broughton, he would say, "What's your name?" "It doesn't matter what your name is." Or he would say, "I'm going to lay the smackdown," or the Rudy Poo candy ass. And he could say, "Shine that high heel real nice. Shine it up nice. And stick it up your candy ass." See you tonight, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Bye now.